Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So I've got some interesting news today. Stories from New York, stories from Saudi Arabia, and a story just basically about the entirety of the United States. And I'm actually going to start with that one. Or at least I was going to start with the one about just the entirety of the United States, but I'm having problems getting that story to pop up. So let me tell you about Ramsey Orta. If the name sounds familiar to you, it's because you've probably heard about this guy before. This is the guy that filmed, he was one of two people, as far as I know, that filmed Eric Garner's death at the hands of the New York Police Department. And after he filmed this and made the video public, well, the cops started harassing him. And they followed him around pretty much every day for several weeks, couple months maybe. And then they, waited until he goofed up, and then they trumped up some charges on him. So this young man, he's 22 years old. He is currently in, I don't know if it's prison. Yeah, he's in prison right now in New York. And, well, he has refused to eat while being held in Rikers. And the reason he was refusing to eat was he was thinking that maybe the guards would try to poison him because of what he did, because he filmed the murder of Eric Garner. And, well, it turns out that he's not a crazy conspiracy theorist thinking that somebody's out to get him. There actually was rat poison in the food. So I have that story. That's from the freethoughtproject.com. They write, 22-year-old Ramsey Orta, the young man who filmed the NYPD killing Eric Garner, was arrested shortly after on trumped-up charges. He has since been locked up at the notorious Rikers prison in New York. Immediately following the killing of Garner, Orta was stalked and targeted by police. They allegedly scrutinized his daily life until they were able to find something to charge him with. Eventually, he was confronted by police who illegally searched him and arrested him for the nonviolent crime of carrying an unregistered firearm. Orta had expressed concern for his safety after his arrest because he was sure that the police were retaliating against him for exposing what they had done. While in prison, Orta has taken seemingly drastic measures to ensure that he is not killed by the gang he witnessed murder Eric Garner. He has refused to eat as he fears the guards may poison him because he is a high-profile opponent of police brutality. Sadly, Orta's fears were well-founded. While he has been behind bars at Rikers, dozens of other inmates have reported traces of, wait for this, rat poison in their food, a claim that was actually recently admitted by prison officials. It was reported by the New York Post last month that 19 different inmates were denied medical testing after bluish-green pellets were found in their food. The prison admitted that these pellets were rat poison, but failed to give inmates medical attention and failed to offer any kind of explanation as to why the prison's food would be tainted with rat poison. Orta has been refusing to eat, so he has not ingested any of the food laced with rat poison and is not one of the 19 inmates in question. However, his health is deteriorating and he is becoming malnourished due to the lack of food. Speaking in an exclusive interview with the Free Thought Project, Danette Chavis, organizer and founder of National Action Against Police Brutality, pointed out that Orta's search and arrest were completely unjustified. Chavis said, "It's imperative that each and every one of us watch this case closely for what is being done to Ramsey Orta." And what is being done to Ramsey Orta is being done across the United States to those who resist the oppressive forces of police. When police have to reach back into the history of a person to justify their actions of today, something is very wrong. For the actions committed by the person at the time of the arrest should be sufficient. And when it is not, they ought not be charged with a crime, because if history is enough to convict, the United States itself is guilty for crimes unable to be enumerated here. And I completely agree that based on the history of things done by the United States government, every person that is in any way involved with the U.S. government should be held accountable for, I would dare say, hundreds of war crimes, if not thousands. And that's just the war crimes. That's not counting all of the other offenses and crimes that have happened. The crime of imprisoning people that just happen to be Japanese, imprisoning people who just happen to speak German in public during both World War I and World War II, imprisoning people who dared to speak out against the wars during World War I. And those are just things off the top of my head. I'm sure if I looked through a history book, I could think of other things. Oh, and let's not forget Kent State, that arguably is a war crime because it was something that was committed by the National Guard, which is, a subsidiary of the U.S. military. So when you've got the National Guard killing people that are protesting, then, yeah, that's a war crime. It is. Even though it was not committed during war or as an official act of war, it's still a war crime when it happens by military. Then you also have the illegal overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii, setting up the Republic of Hawaii, and then overthrowing that so that you can annex what you just created and overthrew. And then the whole statehood vote for Hawaii, that was a sham. Because what they did during that statehood vote in 1959, I believe is when Hawaii had their statehood vote, they said, okay, everybody that's been here for at least a year and is at least, a certain age, I forget if it was 18 or 21 at the time, but everybody that's over this age and has been here for a year gets to vote, unless you still claim allegiance to the Kingdom of Hawaii government that was overthrown in the late 1890s or early 1890s, late 1800s, early 1890s. So if you still claim allegiance to them, you can't vote. So basically what it was only the people that are sympathetic to the U.S. government get to vote in this statehood election for Hawaii. It would be akin to having some kind of election in Afghanistan or in Iraq saying everybody gets to vote unless you voted for the guy that was previously in office. And, well, because both places had compulsory voting and there was only one candidate, that basically means the only people that get to vote are those that are sympathetic to the U.S. or those that, you guessed it, U.S. military. There's more when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davi Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com, all major bookstores, and now available as an audiobook. Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for t-shirts, precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. There's an Amazon shopping iframe built into the website, or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. That's shop.fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So there's just a little bit more here from the story about Mr. Orta, Ramsey Orta. The story here from the Free Thought Project continues. It says, Orta's situation is dire. There's only so long that a person can go without adequate nutrition. It has now been proven that the food in prison cannot be trusted, not for your average inmate, and especially not for controversial ones. His bail has been set at $16,250, and his family cannot afford to pay it. This is truly a life and death situation, so his family has started a fundraiser to help with legal fees. Unfortunately, however, the campaign has only raised a fraction of what is set as the goal, and they post the link here to the fundraiser and ask if you have the means, even if it's a few dollars, to donate. And they finalize by saying that Orta was not the only person to be targeted for filming Eric Garner's murder. As we reported last month, Taisha Allen, who also filmed the death of Eric Garner, is speaking out and saying that her involvement with the case has put a target on her back with the NYPD. And, well, since we're talking about people being killed and targeted by the police, let's go to the other article that I have from the Free Thought Project that might be shocking to some. The headline, American cops killed more people in March than the United Kingdom did in the entire 20th century. Sounds outrageous, right? And when you think about the population difference, yeah, of course the population of the U.S. is larger, but it should not be such a discrepancy to where police kill more people in 1 month than the other country did in the entirety of the 20th century, from 1901 until 2000. That is just absurd. The article here reads, a new report by thinkprogress.com unearthed disturbing figures when it came to the number of police-related deaths that occurred in America in the month of March alone. Just last month, in the 31 days of March, police across the United States of America killed more people than the United Kingdom did in the entire 20th century. In fact, it is twice as many people. Police in the United Kingdom killed only 52 people during that 100-year period, meaning that that's just over 1/2 of one person every year. 52 people, 100 years. According to the report by Think Progress, in March alone, 111 people died during police encounters, 36 more than had died in the previous month. As in the past, numerous incidents were spurred by violent threats from suspects, and 2 officers were shot in Ferguson during a peaceful protest. And I have to say that if police officers are being shot, then it's not a peaceful protest. But I digress. However, the deaths follow a national pattern. Suspects were mainly people of color, mentally ill, or both. This high number in March increased the average for police killings from every 8.5 hours to nearly one police killing every 6.5 hours. These numbers are staggering and show a serious problem with the violent tendencies within the U.S. policing apparatus. Let's look at our immediate neighbor to the north, Canada. The total number of citizens killed by law enforcement officers in the year 2014 was 14 people, which is 78 times fewer than the number of people killed by police in the United States of America. From 2010 through 2014, there were 4 fatal shootings in England, which has a population of about 52 million people. By contrast, Albuquerque, New Mexico has a population of 1% the size of all of the United Kingdom, yet had 26 fatal police shootings in the same time frame. So let's just do some comparison here. So you've got Albuquerque, New Mexico, which has roughly 500,000 people. 1% of the population of Great Britain, which has a population of 52 million. There were 26 fatal shootings in Albuquerque, New Mexico. There were 4 in the United Kingdom from 2010 through 2014. That is something that is majorly wrong with the way American police deal with suspects. And sometimes it's not even suspects. It's just people that they walk up on. Remember the story from somewhere in Alabama. I forget the town, but it was somewhere, I believe, near Huntsville. And luckily, this man did not die, but he was walking down the street, a man from India visiting his family. Walking down the street, somebody calls the cops, there's a suspicious person walking down my street. Because, walking down the street is all of a sudden suspicious. The cops show up. This guy doesn't speak English. They don't speak Hindu or Hindi or whatever language it is that this man speaks. So there was a problem with communicating, and after a couple minutes of interaction, they do some side sweep sort of move, slam the guy down into this slight embankment of, I guess technically it's a hill, but it's only just a couple of feet high, so that's why I'm calling it an embankment. He gets slammed into that. He wound up getting paralyzed, broke some bones in his neck, and luckily for this man, there was some semblance of justice where the police officer was fired. I don't recall if he is getting his medical bills paid for. Of course, if he is, then that's more taxpayer dollars that are going to this, not money out of the pocket of the police officer that did this. But again, that just shows to where police escalate things instead of de-escalating things. The story here continues. It says, China, with a population that is 4.5 times that of the United States, had 12 killings by law enforcement in all of 2014. On average, U.S. police kill people at a rate 70 times higher than that of any other first world country as they protect and serve. And I would dare say that they are not protecting and serving. They might think that they're protecting and serving, but all they're really protecting and serving is their own interest. Because you always hear cops say, well, I've got a family to go home to at the end of the day. What about the guy you just killed? You think he doesn't have a family? You think he doesn't have people that care about him? You think he doesn't have a job that he was supposed to have gone to either later today or tomorrow or the next day? The police, they've come into this mentality of they're the only ones whose lives need to be protected, and their interests are the only interests that need to be served. Now, we're going to move in the final segment from the U.S. and police killing people to what's going on in Saudi Arabia and Yemen, and why are people being killed for having an anti-war rally in Saudi Arabia. We'll get to that when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Fiend Phone. I'm using Fiend Phone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Fiend Phone.
Fiend Phone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of Fiend Phone right now at fiendphone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve Fiend Phone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to fiendphone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's fiendphone.com. FEENPHONE.com. Foxtrot, Echo, November, phone.com.
Fiend Phone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So, what is going on in Saudi Arabia and Yemen? Well, if you have not heard, Saudi Arabia has started a war against Yemen, and there's news and reports that the U.S. military is either just, tacitly supporting Saudi Arabia, saying, yeah, go ahead, do it. And I've also heard that the U.S. is somehow going to be providing actual support to Saudi Arabia in the form of, drones, airplanes, military personnel, etc. And the situation in Yemen is so dire that the Red Cross and Russia are pushing a proposal for a ceasefire so that they can deliver humanitarian aid. Right now, the Red Cross has some shipments across the... I'm not sure if it's across the Gulf of Aden or across the Red Sea, but they have shipments in, towards the Horn of Africa. Or, no, that's not the Horn. The Horn's on the other side. But anyway, they've got some shipments in Africa, in Djibouti, and they cannot get into Yemen because Saudi Arabia has all of the ports blocked off and they're doing a blockade. So the Red Cross has gone to the UN, along with Russia going to the UN, and there's a report here that the UN Security Council was having a meeting over the weekend to discuss the proposal to order a humanitarian ceasefire in the Saudi invasion of Yemen to allow aid shipments, but I have not heard anything about how that meeting came out, if the meeting actually did happen. But the story here about that from antiwar.com says Saudi officials dismissed the Red Cross call for a ceasefire, insisting that aid will be provided by Arab states involved in the war when they believe that aid will not interfere with the war goals themselves. Although, what is the war goal? Well, for Saudi Arabia, the goal is to get the Yemeni president who resigned and has attempted to flee. They want him back in power. And, well, there are some people in Saudi Arabia that are not happy that the military of their country, presumably in their name, because really, like any time there's a military action, it's supposedly in the name of everyone in the country, right? Although they don't necessarily say it that way, but the international stories are Saudi Arabia did X, or the United States did Y. And in the international media, people will read that and think, oh, well, everybody in this country supports this. And obviously that's not the case, but that's how it winds up getting interpreted because of groupthink. Well, at least 30 people in Saudi Arabia yesterday were wounded as Saudi Arabian forces attacked an anti-war protest in the eastern province. The demonstrations were marching against the Saudi war in Yemen. The report here from antiwar.com says locals reported gunfire for 5 hours in the late afternoon and early evening, with claims that the troops were firing indiscriminately in the area, killing a bystander, and they sealed off a village from which many of the marchers came. Dozens were reported arrested, according to witnesses, though the Saudis claim only 4, which they identified as militants, were arrested in the attack. They also claimed a police officer was killed in fighting. The rise of anti-war sentiment is a potential huge problem for the Saudi war, as the government has made the Yemen conflict explicitly sectarian in nature. Saudi Arabia's own Shiite minority predominantly lives in the eastern province, which is also the heart of the oil-producing region. Saudi officials are betting they can win the Yemen war before the unrest does too much damage domestically, but this is a dangerous game, particularly with the goal of reinstalling a former president elected in a one-candidate election not being endorsed by much of anybody inside Yemen. So what you have in Yemen is essentially a civil war of sorts, to where you have the Houthis, and then you have Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, and then you have a very small faction of people that basically it's the military of Yemen that they were fighting on behalf of the former president who resigned. But the Saudi government says, no, he didn't resign because he was elected, and he can't resign because we say so. And now you have the Saudis going in, so it's like a 4-way civil war sort of thing where everybody's fighting everybody, and everybody has different objectives. Now, I remember when I was a kid, that Yemen was 2 countries. There was North Yemen and South Yemen, and sometime during the 1990s, the 2 merged to form just the one country, but ethnically there's a lot of difference between the people in the 2 main regions of Yemen, and this is really what's brought all of this to where it is now. So hopefully something happens there. And I know it's not going to be peaceful, but I don't think that, sending more military in there is going to really do anything. And yes, I know the U.S. government has already been drone bombing Yemen for years, and the now resigned president, who the Saudis say is still the president, he was very supportive of it. He would always say, well, yeah, everybody that got killed was a militant, without ever investigating, without ever doing any kind of follow-up or anything. And, fighting is bad. I'm not condoning, they can fight, that's fine. I'm not condoning that at all. But what I am condemning is if the U.S. military does get involved, because the U.S. military and the U.S. government has no dog in this fight. As the saying goes, not my monkey, not my circus. And that should really be the position of the U.S. government in this situation, but I know it's not going to be. What happens in Yemen, maybe it will in some way down the line affect what happens with other things that the U.S. military is doing, but that's only because the U.S. military is involved in so many conflicts around the world. Most of them are conflicts that the U.S. military doesn't even openly admit. They'll just consider it, part of the global war on terror. So, like everything that's been going on in North Africa and Indonesia and Pakistan, that's not really talked about in the media as being a war. It's just things that are oddities that are happening as part of the global war on terror. And, you know, I could talk about this at length, but I will end by saying we should not be involved. I certainly don't condone it, and I condemn anything that happens in my name. This has been Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online, fppradio.com.